Welcome to Accelerated Velocity, the podcast that helps you move faster, smarter, and more strategically in the rapidly evolving world of AI. We'll break down the latest AI news and innovations and explore how they impact your marketing, sales, and business growth. We'll dive into practical use cases, unpack new tools, and cut through the noise so you and your team can adapt with confidence. I'm Grace Matthews, Director of Content at Inbound AV, a business development agency and HubSpot solutions partner dedicated to driving sustainable business growth. Each week, I'll be here with Peter Malik, our CEO and founder. Join us as we make sense of what's changing and what to do about it. Hey everyone, it's Grace. We had some technical difficulties at the start of our episode today, so we're just going to jump right into the meat of the conversation. To set the stage, today's episode is all about what not to do with AI. We started by looking at a recent MIT study on ChatGPT and its effects on brain activity. The study consisted of 3 different test groups, each of which were asked to write essays based on SAT prompts. The first group used ChatGPT to write their essays. The second group was allowed to use Google to get information and ideas, and the third group had no help or resources. They called this the, quote, brain-only group, which I thought was hilarious. The research found that those using ChatGPT unsurprisingly had the worst papers. They weren't interesting or original, and they all read very similarly to one another. On the other side, the brain-only group had the most interesting and unique essays. Now, when it came to brain activity, the ChatGPT group showed the lowest levels of engagement, especially in brain regions associated with critical thinking. The brain-only group's EEGs showed the highest levels of critical thinking activity. They had higher executive control, higher attention, and higher engagement. And though not quite as high, the group using Google similarly outperformed the ChatGPT group. So why does this matter on our podcast? How does this relate to business development? Let's pick up my original conversation with Peter from here.
So first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying, we both belong to the same company. It's called Inbound AV. And one of the prime things we do is help other businesses, solopreneurs, large companies with utilizing LLMs, utilizing agentic AI to streamline their processes and make things easier and make the work go faster. And at the same time, I love this subject because something we've been talking about for quite a while now is that we have all these amazing tools, and all of those amazing tools also have a backside. And the backside might be changing society in a positive way, and it might be changing society or even human beings in a negative way.
The actual quality of the writing itself being subpar from the ChatGPT group says a lot to anybody who's writing for content marketing, running email campaigns, running cold outreach campaigns even. I think the very clear evidence that writing that is just 100% generated by ChatGPT is not resonating with people, no matter what industry you're in, is a very important thing to remember. And beyond that, it's not just the quality, but it's the necessity of originality and creativity.
So I have an overarching question, and that is, as I'm hearing you talk about this study, I'm thinking about the LLMs themselves, that we've had these little pockets where this news comes out, LLMs are training on AI-generated results, they're getting stupider. Most recently, it's been the LLMs are hallucinating big time. And so I wonder if the LLM brains are not entirely different from our own human brains, in as much as, it's kind of like real input in is going to be a lot more valuable than generated input in. And in fact, if everybody's relying on LLMs for their entire day, is humankind going to get stupider, just as the LLMs have gotten stupider by reading their own stuff? And how could that actually change us in this way?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of framing it. I think if you're going to turn to ChatGPT or Perplexity or any other platform, I'm throwing those out because those are the ones I tend to tend to go towards. It's great to maybe use those as research hubs, as tools to identify patterns and trends in your own data or in your industry, but they're not great to develop a strategy from start to finish that you're not engaging with in some more thought-provoking way.
I agree with you 100%. And I think I also want to tie it back. I think we mentioned this last week to what we are doing here in Inbound AV. And we're building this HubSpot app that does very specific functions within the CRM, within HubSpot CRM, of enhancing data for potential prospects and researching their company, and maybe even have HubSpot respond in a different way based on the size of the company, and automating all of that stuff. And it's all stuff that's, designed to save time, save research, etc. And the picture that it becomes clearer and clearer to us as we get into it is that we want these agents to do a very specific, very narrow thing whose results we can rely on. And so put them all together and we have a package of results that we can rely on. And to me, that's kind of the conscientious and safe for business use of AI right now where we stand in the middle of 2025. The bottom line is just such an interesting time, and there's so many things in play. And this has been something that's been discussed even before ChatGPT, as AI capabilities were developing, is like, is this a good thing? Is this something that can help humanity? Is it also something that can destroy humanity? And most of the AI specialists and professors and coders and et cetera recognize that this is something that could really be a bad thing. And so I think it's really important to look at this, to look at studies like this from an IT, just so we know what we're getting into and we can make informed decisions that not only for our business, but for our own mental health.
Absolutely. I guess we kind of sound like complete ChatGPT haters today. I think this is a good time too to pivot and look at a few easy tips on how not to use an LLM.
All right. So, one of my favorites is a concept of what kind of data you're getting to return. Is that data that has a historical value, or is this data that could be changing every week? And the perfect example is in email marketing, our email subject lines. An effective email subject line might have a shelf life of a week, and then everybody's onto it, they're done with it, and it's worthless. So I think we touched on this last week, that ChatGPT was in our search returning email subject lines that are like so far beyond a valuable subject line, and in fact will keep your email from being opened, that you want to really be cognizant of how old is the data that you're searching for. And if it's something that is changing as dynamically as email subject lines, as advertising copy, etc., it's not that LLMs can't be valuable, but you just have to be very, very careful that the data you're getting back is true today and not true necessarily 2 months ago, but it is up to date and true today.
A small thing you can do to improve your results on that is to just give time frames to whatever LLM you're using. Because if you say like, tell me the most recent subject line trends, you might still be getting articles that are recent to the LLM, but not really recent based on how fast everything moves. That leads us to another big mistake that a lot of people make, which is vague or underdeveloped prompts. And there are millions of lists and resources out there on like prompt templates and what to do and what not to do when it comes to prompting. But I think we can just give a couple of quick examples today that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think that the lesson for me and for many other people that I know is that it's very easy to go in as you're trying out an LLM and ask it something like, what's a great marketing B2B strategy? And that is like, couldn't be more vague. And so consequently, I think that something that happens is people who are new to the LLMs, new to using ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it might be, will put in a prompt like that, get back garbage, and think like, well, this isn't worth my time. Where in fact, if they had put in a prompt that was more specific, that would detail the type of output that you want, etc., that they would have had something they were pleased with. So I think that that's kind of an overall recommendation of what to do, is to make sure that you learn a little bit about prompting, what works, how to structure it, and, especially if you're on the fence about, is this valuable? Is this just, hype? And it's not just hype. And, as we were discussing, there's plenty of trapdoors, but at the same time, it can be unbelievably valuable to you, to your business, to everything.
And I'll throw out a little mini tip that I've had success with when it comes to prompting. If you're not sure what the best prompt approach might be for a specific task that you're working on or something you need help with from ChatGPT, let's say, ask the LLM what the best format for your prompt might be. So and
Exactly.
state your intention too. So you might say, my goal is to improve my marketing strategy at the decision phase with my audience. This is the information that I have. What is the best way for me to frame a prompt so that you can help me out with that? That actually can be very successful, because then you can get information back from whatever LLM that you're working on, kind of walking you through how it approaches those sorts of questions and how it can get you the best results possible.
Last week we touched on the data that LLMs delivered, and we talked about structured versus unstructured data.
Yeah, I would love to build on that a little bit, because I think, Peter, what you and I found when we were playing around with ChatGPT's deep research feature last week was that, especially for that feature, prompt engineering was really influential on the results that you got back. And one important factor in that, when you're using deep research or even just a regular prompt on any LLM, is to make sure there's a clear distinction between structured data and unstructured data. For the most part, a lot of these LLMs that everybody has access to right now do not handle unstructured data analysis well. And that would be more having an LLM analyze more vague data sets. Like, let's say you upload your spreadsheet of all your email marketing information and you say, let me know what the most successful email marketing strategy was from this data set. That's going to be way too vague. What you can do instead is you can direct the LLM to a specific data field. I could say, factor in email open rates, and tell me what the most successful sending strategy was in terms of time and day on impacting our email open rates. So that's something that's a lot more targeted and specific. And as long as the LLM has all of the data fields available to it to analyze that, you're going to get much more insightful results back. And if you have a CRM or a marketing automation platform or something like that that's integrated with an LLM of your choosing, the same goes for that as well, is to think about how you're guiding the prompts towards structured data, ideally.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I know we've thrown out a lot of tips in terms of prompting and navigating AI, and ultimately making sure that you don't stop thinking for yourself. Stop thinking critically on these different platforms. But I know, Peter, you wanted to mention a couple other things before we close out.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little call to action. We're going to make a pivot, not every episode, but 1 or 2 episodes a month. We're going to start to have experts on the show to talk about different aspects of AI. And so this is a call to action. If you know somebody who would be fantastic, who will blow our minds, who will not deliver unstructured data, then, let us know.
Awesome. All right. Well, sounds like a plan. And I personally am excited to see how this podcast keeps developing. Thanks for your time today, Peter. I will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Grace. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Accelerated Velocity. A link to our website, newsletter, and all that other good stuff can be found down in the show notes. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a 5-star review, and make sure to subscribe for weekly episodes on the latest in AI for business.